A very good Thursday evening to you. Meteorologist Todd Howell back in the Channel 10 WBIR Streaming Center for today's edition and this evening's edition of our winter storm update. We continue to monitor this developing winter storm that's going to be tracking into East Tennessee starting Saturday and running through Sunday night. So we're going to get right to it. Just a real quick recap. Yesterday, we picked up with what has changed, and certainly as of yesterday, we were talking about the much lower snow potential compared to what models were showing earlier. So that trend has generally continued, and we were talking about the greater icing potential. You have more of the wintry mix with the sleet and freezing rain. That trend has continued into today. So not a whole lot of changes, but going back to late last night, started to see this and into today, the ice accumulations could be significant in some areas. So we're going to have to deal, unfortunately, with more icing potentially across many areas and accumulations which could lead to power outages. So we'll talk about all the details right now. I hope you're having a great Thursday, by the way. And let me just say real quick, and I'll show you this in the forecast, no weather worries tonight or tomorrow for Friday. Still got time to get prepped and get ready for this upcoming winter storm that looks to bring a lot of hazardous travel this weekend. So tonight's fine. Friday, we're in the 40s, dry tomorrow, and Friday night looks good. The timing would start generally later Saturday morning, more likely into the afternoon. So later morning, Saturday afternoon, we'll start to see some wintry precip moving in. So let's get right to the timing. That does segue and lead into our first headline as I take down that map and bring up the first one right here. So initially, later Saturday morning into the early afternoon, the initial round of precipitation is expected to be in the form of some snow and sleet. It may be on the light side, but we could see some accumulations initially from some snow and sleet. Sleet has a beat. Sleet is a frozen raindrop that bounces off the ground. That's different from freezing rain, which is rain all the way down to the ground and freezes on contact with a sub-freezing surface. That's what produces a coating of ice. Glaze and icing comes from freezing rain. That's kind of the worst out of all the precip types. We'll talk about that. Looks like we had to deal with that. So Saturday specifically, it starts as a mix of snow and sleet later morning and afternoon. Now later Saturday afternoon, that snow-sleet mixture is expected to change over to all sleet first, and sleet could be heavy. We may see some accumulating sleet in the afternoon. Later afternoon and evening, that sleet or any snow mix changes over to freezing rain. Still cold enough for freezing precipitation, but it will be likely in the form of freezing rain and icing conditions developing. So let me take this full and we'll walk through the rest of our weekend. So there's your Saturday. Snow and sleet to begin, changing to sleet, then freezing rain, and that freezing rain and icing threat is going to continue for Saturday night into early Sunday morning, unfortunately. This is the time frame where we could see some of the more significant icing issues, Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Okay, I want to point that out. That's when the roads are expected to be hazardous whenever we start to see this precipitation developing, but particularly late Saturday, Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Now, after we get through the first part of Sunday morning, it's expected to change to all rain. That's right, we're getting all precipitation types, so we'll take it back full here. Yeah, the rest of your Sunday, rain is likely. In our third panel here for Sunday, during the day, models are showing temperatures that are going to be warming up into at least the mid to upper 30s. We get just above freezing. That warm air in the upper levels, mid levels I should say, will gradually work its way on down into the lower levels to at least help scour out enough of the cold air eventually to give us all rain. Matter of fact, not only is rain likely Sunday, the rain can be heavy at times. And one model is very energized, and actually another one now is joining that. They're showing even a line of heavier rain, maybe a few rumbles of thunder moving through Sunday afternoon. So all that says is that models are showing this is a very energized and strong storm system that's giving you all different types of precipitation. All right, so that's Sunday, rain is likely, but as they say, wait, there's more. Colder air wraps back around on the backside of the system, especially late Sunday night, and that's going to change the rain back over to snow showers late Sunday night as that much colder Arctic air moves in. Now, that will segue until we have a chance for some additional, at least lighter accumulations of even snow, all areas, late Sunday night and early Monday morning. Here's the issue. That very cold Arctic air moving in, we're dropping down into the teens Sunday night, Monday morning. So we could go from above freezing and rain Sunday afternoon to teens well below freezing and obviously any moisture on the ground is going to freeze, and it may freeze quickly. I hope we avoid some type of flash freeze, is where air temperatures drop very quickly, suddenly, and you see moisture, liquid go to freezing, precipitation, ice very quickly. So that's going to be a concern, though. Late Sunday night, Monday morning, any water that's on the ground and anything else that's fallen has a good chance to freeze over. So Monday morning could also be hazardous because of the very cold air freezing or refreezing everything on the ground. So that's kind of what we're talking about as far as that goes. So that's your weekend timeline in order. Again, I know you're seeing a lot of stuff and a lot of information, different sources, especially on social media, but that's what we're expecting as of this Thursday, January 22nd, and that's the update. All right, let's come back and talk about these different precipitation types. I guess to spend a half second, I'm not going to talk about the snow. It's cold enough for snow. You know about that, and rain. You know about that. It's warm all the way through. But the two other types, the sleet and the freezing rain, I think this is what we're going to see most of throughout the event. I mean, we have a chance for snow on the front end and on the back end. It's just this storm, we started talking about this yesterday, it's not nearly going to be a snow event. It's definitely going to be a wintry mix event of sleet and freezing rain primarily. And we do get in on the rain and then back to snow, etc. We talked about that. But these two, sleet and freezing rain, are going to add up. Now, the huge differences. Sleet will not cause power outages, basically. Sleet is a frozen raindrop that accumulates kind of like snow. It's an ice ball. It's an ice pellet, right? But it doesn't glaze over or coat everything like freezing rain. And you know this, but just to point out the differences. You know, if you have a lot of sleet, that's bad to drive on. Matter of fact, because an ice pellet takes a lot longer to melt than a snowflake. So if you get a lot of sleet, that's one of the, besides freezing rain and ice, but that's the next worst type of precip you can get for travel, because it's going to take a longer time for an ice pellet to melt than a snowflake. But so sleet just accumulates but doesn't coat everything. Freezing rain's the worst, as you likely know, because it's rain all the way down, but right here, see that cold layer? That's right at the ground. That's tree limbs, power lines, your deck surfaces, everything. Any surface that is at or below freezing, when the rain, it's rain all the way down to the ground, just like normal rain, but when it hits that cold surface that's at or below freezing, it freezes on contact and it coats everything. The surfaces, the cars, you know, the deck surfaces, tree limbs, power lines. That's when you get enough ice accretion or accumulation of ice. That's when you could be talking about tree limbs down, tree damage, and power outages. So the reason I'm spending a little time on that is because unfortunately it looks like we're going to have to deal, and that may be one of the more impactful events and impactful precip types that we see out of this winter storm. But we're getting all different modes. So that's why I started with the timeline, because it varies. But that's also why you remember that, and I'm going to show you this graphically, and we'll point this out again in a moment, but that extended period where we go from sleet to freezing rain, Saturday afternoon into early Sunday morning. So Saturday night, early Sunday morning, that's when we get an extended period and lengthy period of prolonged period of icing. So heads up, that's when travel is expected to be almost at its worst. We get the rain on Sunday, by the way. We get just above freezing. The road conditions will likely improve some. So it's a little bit of good news with that rain and slightly above freezing and warmer air. That may help us on the road. So we may get a little bit of a reprieve along with that heavier rain during the day Sunday. But then we need to get back off the roads again late Sunday night because very cold air is moving in. Okay, so that's the setup on that again. So here's your 3-day. Friday, again, quiet tomorrow. Enjoy your Friday. Finish preparations, get supplies. You know, it's good to have those batteries, lanterns, flashlights. And we recommend the batteries and flashlights or the lanterns that use the batteries instead of, as opposed to the candles or anything flammable. You just kind of want to stay away from that. If we get power outages, you just want to have those flashlights and batteries. Make sure all your devices are charged up. You know, if we think about this, just sitting around right now, okay, what if we don't have power? Okay, well, you know, you don't have the TV, you don't have all your electrical devices, nothing's, you know, so what can I do? Well, you can have some of those devices charged up, and hopefully if the cell towers and everything else don't lose power, so you can still use that. But also if you don't have power, you don't have heat as much, so, you know, unless you have a fireplace, wood-burning fireplace, etc. But so then you're talking about, you can, I guess, gas, you have that as well. But you need to have extra blankets, right? If you don't have a safe heating source or a way to keep warm. So the blankets, some of those things, if you lose power, just to keep heads up and a reminder of that. So we are looking at the winter storm moving in. Weather impact alerts will be in place for 7 a.m. Saturday through 7 p.m. Sunday. That's when the official winter storm watch is in place. So here are the specific details. Yes, Saturday morning through Sunday night, but lingering impacts into early Monday morning. But this is the time frame. The impacts are for a wintry mix of some snow and sleet and freezing rain, but particularly for that sleet and ice accumulations from that freezing rain. That's one of the biggest concerns. Definitely will have, obviously, a huge impact, not only the roads for driving, but potential power outages. So those are the main impacts from this winter storm. And as far as the precip types, that's what we're expecting. And that's kind of the very latest. Again, what can you do? You want to use caution, and if you don't have to travel this weekend, don't. If you don't have to be out and about. And again, as I mentioned, with the all rain Sunday, we may improve some, and that may be a window where we can, get around a little bit better. It depends on the treated roads and how much washes off and all that and how warm we get. But otherwise, Sunday night, Monday morning, again, the roads could get slippery and slick again. So let's go through the particulars. We still have a winter storm watch for all of East Tennessee, 7 a.m. Saturday through 7 p.m. Sunday. It has been upgraded to a winter storm warning for Kentucky and the Plateau. Now, whenever there's a watch issued, it doesn't stay there. Well, it's going to be, changed and upgraded to either an advisory or a warning. An advisory is a low-end threshold for some hazardous wintry weather, okay, and more of the minor impacts, etc. If you get a warning, that's more of your hazardous travel conditions are likely and more of your major significant impacts. So that's the difference between an advisory, low end, and a warning is more high end. Okay, so we have the warning for Southeast Kentucky for hazardous wintry weather, snow accumulations and ice accumulations in play for Southeast Kentucky. So that's for both for Southeast Kentucky. And matter of fact, from the National Weather Service office in Nashville, for Cumberland and Fentress, they actually have down 1/4 of an inch ice accumulations possible and anywhere from 2 to 8 inches of snow possible. So what they're talking about there. We don't have the amounts quite that high for the Plateau, but it gives you, that's a wide range, right? 2 to 8. That's from the National Weather Service. So it gives you an idea of the impacts and that potential, because the further north you go, that's where most of the snow is going to be. But again, the impacts are going to be all over with that icing potential, okay, especially. So we're likely going to see either an advisory or a warning. I'm not going to take a guess which one. I mean, I could guess which one it's going to be. My guess would probably be a warning, but we'll see. But that will likely be upgraded as we go later tonight and into tomorrow. Again, we'll just have to wait and see what the National Weather Service does with that. That would be my guess if I had to say. All right, so here's what we're seeing for precip types and totals. Not much change today versus we showed this last night at the same time. We've tweaked it a little bit. One of the tweaks, and I'll just start down to the south, you see the green? That's more of the warmer air with less wintry mix. And eventually we're all going to see that rain on Sunday, pretty much all of us, even up in Kentucky. All that could change to some rain for Sunday afternoon. But the one I wanted to point out is that's also denoting less wintry precipitation and more of the rain. And that does include the foothills. So we're actually going to see strong winds in the mountains out of the south. Downsloping winds are actually going to help to dry that air out and warm the air up a little bit. So for adjacent foothills, including almost Greene County, Cocke County, Sevier, Monroe, Blount, into Monroe counties, and into the Southern Valley, this is specifically for the foothills now. May see a little bit less wintry precipitation overall because that downsloping effect from the winds coming off the mountains and from south to north. So that's one impact. That's one change a little bit yesterday. Models are kind of showing that. So in the Southern Valley, we'll just start there. Ice of 1/4 to 1/2 inch is still possible. And that's going to be, everything's kind of moving from south to north or southwest to northeast with this system. Well, it's coming in from the west, but it kind of gradually goes from southwest to northeast and then changing to rain in the Southern Valley. Okay, the pink is for most of East Tennessee in general, except for the far north. But let's talk about the pink right here. I'll switch sides. Let me take it full because it's easier for you to see, and I'll just point it out. Okay, in the pink area, we're talking about the mixed precipitation, okay? And I'll just illustrate that right here. Mixed precipitation in terms of the sleet and freezing rain predominantly. Some snow on the front end, on the back end, and then rain, again, is also expected as mentioned on Sunday. But as far as the icing potential, 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and this is for many areas. So that's where we're talking about the potential for some of that significant icing to develop. from later Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Now notice, now here's the snow, 1 to 3 inches. You know, there is a chance we could see an inch or two before it goes over to more of the freezing rain, late Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. There's a couple of models. I'll bring it back full so you can see my face as I verbally express this. There's 1 or 2 models looking at right now that don't give hardly any snow at all, and just keep it more of that icing threat, and then the rain, and then even there's 1 or 2 that don't have as much wraparound snow coming back through. So there's that. So I'll be totally honest and candid with you. We look at a lot of data, a lot of models, so it's not a slam dunk, and they're not all in agreement saying the same thing, and that's what we try to process and then give you our forecast. So, but I just want to let you know there are some model data that don't show hardly any of that as far as that goes. On the other end of the spectrum, so to speak, we still have one of the main models we use and a couple other, the high-res model as well, that is showing that chance. So that's why we come up with our own forecasts and our numbers when we look at all the data. So if we had to say, is there potential for 1 to 3 inches? There is, if it moves in a little bit earlier, like some models are saying, and if there's a delay in that changeover from the snow and sleet to the freezing rain. So the ones that don't give us much snow are also slowing down the arrival of snow and sleet. Some of them are not until late in the day Saturday to even bring it in. So if those happen to be correct, then yeah, we probably wouldn't see that. Okay, so that's the timing aspect. That's just the timing of it. Okay, and again, it's kind of complex because there's a lot in play. There's a lot of dry air that has to be overcome before it can reach the ground. Again, it's just not simple. A lot of times it's complex. So, but that's what we think is the potential. We could see anywhere from that and on the front end. And again, further north now, let's talk about the blue. I think I've covered everything there, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. I'll come back to that in a moment. In blue, this is for northern counties, but especially Kentucky and Virginia, and basically along the Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia state line. If you live in Kentucky and Virginia or across from Tazewell to La Follette, Jellicoe, Oneida, Huntsville, Jamestown, far northern areas, Rogersville, Sneeville, and all areas in between those areas, you have a better chance for snow, and you could see 3 to 6 inches possible. And that's both from seeing that developing Saturday. You're going to be in the greater depth of cold air longer. So you're going to experience the colder air longer on Saturday before it also changes over for you to sleet, and then some freezing rain, and then some rain, probably. Okay, I know I thought probably. Well, the further north in Kentucky, we'll see if that warm nose makes it all the way there, but most all of us are going to see, even where you get the snow, you're likely then going to see the sleet and the freezing rain as well, even for snow areas. So we're all seeing that kind of same transition, and then most all of us may see that rain on Sunday as well, as I mentioned. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what's expected. Again, that's today's update. And we'll continue to fine-tune that, make some tweaks as needed, as necessary, as the modeling changes, right? But that's what it looks like for the most part. Again, you give or take a little bit above that or less than that on some of those totals. But again, just want to stress this as well. And let me go back so I can show you that amounts. It just went to the end of the model. There it is. Regardless of amounts, the impacts will still be the same, okay? Let's just talk about icing potential, and here's what we're looking at, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. Even if we get just a small, less than 1/10 of an inch, that's enough to glaze everything and make the road slippery, right? You know, whether there's 1/10 of an inch on the road or 1/2 inch on the road, it's just a matter of thickness, right? Both are bad. So we don't, I'm just using ice accumulation example, but the same with snow. You don't focus too much on necessarily on the amounts, okay? And that does play a role, but both, either a small amount or a large amount, can have some similar impacts because they're icy and slippery. So that's what we're trying to stress, that it doesn't take much to create hazardous travel conditions, and that's what we're looking at as far as the icing potential, 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And so when we talk, and let's talk about those amounts. If you get up to 1/10 of an inch, that's where you talk about a glaze of ice, like on the windshield, a thin coating, usually minor impacts when it's 1/10 of an inch or less. Okay, but you saw that was just one model I showed you. It has around 1/4 for us. So if we get up to 1/4, and this is an example, let me take this full because I think you can see it better, right? You can see it better. Less of me and more of the map, absolutely. All right, so there's what we're seeing. See that tree limb? We're looking at the middle graphic here so I can illustrate while we're talking. And that's where you can see hazardous travel conditions, obviously more likely, minor tree damage, and that's where you get into the isolated power outages. This is for up to 1/4 of an inch. You can see that right there. It's kind of neat how they do it. They measure, it's the width, the diameter of that icing on either end of the branch. They do both sides like that. So it's kind of neat. All right, so that's 1/4 inch ice. We don't want this. If you get up to 1/2 inch or more, it's significant. Then your travel is almost impossible. If you get a lot of icing on the roads, we hopefully avoid that. We're hopefully less than that and more like 1/4. But we do have that potential for the hazardous travel. And again, the tree damage and power outages obviously become more likely as you see the thicker ice accumulation and ice accretion. So all that just to say, here's our winter impacts. We have the highest impacts on the roads for travel because, as we said, it doesn't take much to create those hazardous conditions, and a prolonged period of sleet to freezing rain appears likely for most areas. And then as far as the snow, we covered that. You got to go north of 40 for most of the snow, especially in the Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia state line. We could see some snow elsewhere and even the valley on the front end and the back end, but in between, most of the event, that sleet to freezing rain, and again, even rain on Sunday. And our map, our futurecast will show you that very well. Cold, we got that at low because mainly we're in the 20s. We even get into the mid to upper 30s again Sunday afternoon briefly with that warming trend Sunday and the rain. But then it's going to dive down into the teens Sunday night. And that, as you could suspect and might imagine, can create its own problems. So here's a look at our in-house, this is our high-res model. We've been talking the last couple of days, about when we go from medium range to high-res, medium resolution models to higher resolution models. So now we're there. Now, I'm gonna play it all the way through. It doesn't go through Sunday night yet. It goes through like early Sunday afternoon. That's just as far out. It's a 72-hour model. So we're almost there for the whole event, not quite, but obviously each time we show it, it'll go out further in time. But I will show you as far as it goes out. So here's what we're seeing. This is 7 a.m. Saturday, and what I want to point out, we've got cold temperatures at this time in the 20s with dew points that are likely going to be in the, teens and running pretty dry, maybe upper single digits in some areas, but pretty cold, dry air at times. But so this moisture, at first, it may be precipitating aloft in virga and evaporating before it moves in. It'll take a little bit. So it could start out light. In other words, some light snow and light icing, or light sleet, ice pellets. And then, so the blue is snow, the pink is sleet as far as this time frame. And right now, eventually that pink will become freezing rain. We'll see that in a moment. But let's move the features forward. This is 7 a.m. Saturday, later Saturday morning, and especially into the afternoon. That's when we see everything moving from, again, southwest to northeast moving in. So the snow potential kind of works its way up the valley, northern valley, up into Kentucky and Virginia, that's where there'll be the longest duration of cold air and best chance for snow, northern areas. But we have a chance to see some of that snow and sleet accumulation as it's moving through, okay? That's where that 1 to 3 inch comes in play for some of the northern half of our region. Not really expecting a whole lot. You'll see sleet, but then this is going to transition from mainly sleet. We could have heavy sleet for a time from Saturday afternoon into the evening, but then notice the pink. See how it kind of even back builds a little bit? We get that extended period. It's going to go from sleet to freezing rain. That's the icing. So freezing rain equals ice on the ground and coats everything. And so that's what we're unfortunately looking at. This is Saturday night. And again, we've been in that sleet to freezing rain mode now through late afternoon and evening, and that's going to continue into early Sunday morning. Then eventually, may take a while, because cold Arctic air is heavier, it's more weighted and dense, and it's harder to dislodge and move out of the valley, especially lower elevation valley areas. So, a lot of times in the valley we're lower elevation, you don't have as good a chance for snow compared to high elevations. But when you're talking about cold air that's dense, it's actually going to stay in the valleys longer than even up on the mountaintops. So that's where we may have an extended period of that icing that could continue into early Sunday morning. But then pretty much all of the models, even the one that has more of the wintry weather potential with it, it also is in agreement that we'll see enough warm air that it's mainly rain as we get above freezing, mid to upper 30s Sunday afternoon. So this is Sunday at 1:30, and this is as far as this model goes out. So I can't show any more on this model, but what I will go ahead and point out, you see back to the west in Nashville and Kentucky, see the wraparound? If we moved everything forward, everything starts to come on and back around. So we're likely going to see the rain go back to at least some sleet and some snow showers on the backside of the system. That's probably going to be later Sunday night. So everything's slightly slower. It's probably going to rain. It's going to rain hard at times Sunday afternoon. There may even be a few isolated rumbles of thunder and within this convection, so that's possible. I mean, there could be a few locations that may get thunder sleet. Possible. It's just the dynamics energized with this system. And that's what we're looking at potentially. So that's going to move through. The wraparound will give snow showers, and we could have some serious icing conditions with refreezing of that moisture on the roads late Sunday night, Monday morning. Okay, a few more maps, then we'll conclude and wrap up this weather stream. And of course, we'll keep you updated going forward tonight and throughout the day tomorrow beforehand. But I wanted to show you the evidence of the Arctic air coming out of Canada. These are the current air temperatures. Now, we're not going to be this cold, but I just wanted to show you where the Arctic air is now, and it is starting to make a move to the south. So the players are on the field, so to speak, on the map. Minus 15 Bismarck, 3 below in Sioux Falls, and 12 below in Minneapolis. And there you see that contrast. That's where storms like to form, where you have that temperature contrast. Look at the wind chill. It's 40 below is what it feels like in Minneapolis. I know, that just 40 below, 40 degrees below zero is what it feels like in Minneapolis right now. 25 below in Sioux Falls, 39 below in Bismarck. If you look at the colors, we're already past the last color that we have on our wind chill map legend. So that's actually the base map. So we've already used up all the colors. I guess maybe I would find a new color palette that goes to the extreme, kind of extreme cold. But that's some serious. That is extreme cold coming down. So that's the cold Arctic air. Again, so what are we talking about? We're talking about some teens and single digits for lows and highs in the 20s and 30s. Very cold by early next week. So whatever sticks around could be sticking around. All right, so we'll talk about it on the 7-day in just a second. Variably cloudy tonight, no worries, a chilly night, just below freezing tonight, but again, about average, 31. And again, no worries tomorrow for your Friday or Friday night. So nothing's basically taking place until generally later Saturday morning. Again, unless something really started to speed up. If anything, the trend has been for it to slow down a little bit. So we feel confident in saying that nothing's no worries into through Friday night. Okay, so Friday forecast, partly cloudy, seasonally cool, 44 for the high. And then we'll start to see that Arctic cold front moving through late Friday night and Saturday morning. So here's your 7-day weather impact alerts through the weekend for Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, we're at 25 to start and a high of freezing, maybe. This all depends on how quickly that precipitation moves in. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1, if you will. If you get the precipitation moving in, that initial band of snow and sleet that we're expecting Saturday, late morning, afternoon, if that moves in sooner, well, what it's going to do, the air's going to be really dry. You're going to what we call wet bulb, and you're going to stay below freezing for longer. It's going to cool everything down, and if obviously it moves in sooner, you got a chance for a little bit more of the snow sleet part. Nothing excessive, but it's just going to help to get things colder sooner. And that could have an impact when we are going to be switching over from the snow and sleet to sleet and freezing rain. But that means we get that 29, but then slow to rise to that 37. So the process of how quickly that takes place is still uncertain to some degree. So we gave you the forecast because what we're expecting is it to still be freezing rain early Sunday morning and then warm up later Sunday morning and be all rain pretty much the whole day Sunday from there on out. So if it takes a little longer, a little bit more icing. What if it takes longer for the precip to arrive? The reverse is true. Well, you may see that warmer. I mean, there's some models that give us just above freezing Saturday, and you would have less of a wintry impact initially, and then we'd have less overall icing or duration, and then also more rain and equally as much rain on Sunday. So that's still in play a little bit about the timing, the duration of this from late Saturday and Saturday night and Sunday morning. That's why we'll continue to keep you updated. But that's what I told you in the timeline. That's what we're expecting right now. There's your cold temps, 16 Sunday night, Monday morning, 7 for a low temperature Monday night, Tuesday morning. And that doesn't take into account that's anything on the ground. That's just pure Arctic air, cold air moving in. So that's the real deal, right? So you see this a lot behind any winter storm system. It typically gets very cold, right? A lot of times after it snows, and it's very cold after, and everything, gets really cold and crunchy if you have snow or sleet or ice on the ground. So that's the concern. Anything that falls, even the heavy rain, basically water, it's good to help us with our drought, but otherwise it's not going to be a good thing to have once we see that cold Arctic air moving in, because everything's going to try to freeze over. We'll have to see what the winds do, if they help to dry the roads out any beforehand. That's possible, but we're expecting that fairly high potential for maybe some hazardous travel conditions to continue Monday morning. And look at Monday's high, 27. So we'll just have to see how Monday goes, and then Monday night we bottom out 7. But then we go from just above freezing Tuesday, still cold and maybe impactful, and then Wednesday we're looking at 40 degrees. There's a slight chance for a little weak system moving in Thursday, and I'm just going to briefly mention in passing, we're not going to spend too much time on this. Some of the models show a chance for wintry weather the following weekend. We're just going to leave that right there. I know, we're not worried about that. We're going to take one system at a time, absolutely. And this is the system first up. So yeah, and it's got our hands full with it, no doubt, trying to figure out, exactly what's going to play out. But that's our best estimate and forecast, what we know right now. So thank you for joining us. We'll continue to do the best job we can of keeping you updated throughout the event. And weather in East Tennessee, it's very humbling. It can change, and it can be challenging. We all know that very well, but that's why we love it. That's why it's fun. And I hope you're having a good week. Hey, I hope you have a great night. I'll be back with updates at 10 and 11 on air, and we'll see you back about this time tomorrow evening for another full update. God bless and take care.